All right. Welcome, everyone, to the preparation of the session for our mix tomorrow. Our analog mix tomorrow. We're going to do a little bit of session prep, which you kind of want to do on just about anything you're going to mix for a number of reasons. If for nothing else, just to get familiar with the song and to organize things a bit. So I'm going to go as fast as I can through this. I don't want to listen to the track more than I have to. When I go into the mix, typically I want to have everything be really fresh and exciting. And if I get bogged down in the process here, sometimes that can affect I know this might sound a little cheesy, but my emotional approach to the song. And, having done this for a little while, I would say that being excited and finding the proper energy for the song is super important for how my mix turns out. If I get sucked into the details too much, I often find it detrimental. Now, everybody's different. That's just me. So, having said that, the song is perfect for this exercise. It's a rock song. It's super rock. It was recorded a couple of years ago. The band is called Gift Curse here, based here out of San Diego. And there are minimal tracks in the session, and I think that's perfect. It's sort of like the baseline of just what we need. I haven't listened to this really since we recorded it. Thankfully, I took some notes because I don't really remember exactly what we did, but I do know we went fast. The purpose of the track was to sort of print a sound as we were going, as we were getting into it, so that we could do a analog mix later. There was a minute where we thought we would dump it to a tape machine. That never happened. Like I said, the song is sort of finished. I think we could probably add background vocals, tambourine, some percussion, some other stuff if we really wanted to. But honestly, the foundation of the house here is perfect for this exercise in analog mixing. So having said all of that, let's take a look at my notes and the session and see what we got here. Pretty obvious to start. Let's say kick in, it's going to be a mic inside, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, tom 1, tom 2, overhead left, overhead right, hats. This is front of kick left, front of kick right, room left, room right, bass DI, bass amp, bass distortion, bass DI distortion, bass DI distortion. I'll have to look at what that is. Guitar 1, guitar 2, guitar 3, guitar 4, guitar 5. We'll listen to this here in a second. I think guitar 1 and 2 are probably going to be our primary rhythm guitars. And then we have V1 comp, V2 comp. So let's go over to the screen, and look at all the stuff's already rendered. Okay, so guitar 4 and 5 don't come until the end. Guitar 3, here it's sort of the first chorus marker. So we got markers, that's good. Our vocals have been comped. I don't recall doing that. We probably did it the day of. We may have edited them a little bit, but I bet you they're pretty just straight ahead. So that's cool. We don't have to deal with any of that. We'll verify that here in a second. Okay, so let's do playback. All right, let's see what our marker says. TP, probably top. And then start, hi-hats, snare. Well, everything's in mono. Of course it is. We have no pan set. Everything's at unity. Okay, let me stop for a second. I'm just going to pan front of kick left, front of kit left, front of kit right, room left, room right, hats, we'll just pan left, overhead right, overhead left. I always do drummer's perspective because I'm a drummer, unless there's someone who wants it the opposite, which I will happily oblige. So I'll leave tom as mono, bass mono. Let's see if this is, I think this is rhythm guitar here. Let's see. Yeah, so let's give you left for now. You can be right. All of these pannings will be irrelevant tomorrow because these will all be going to individual channels on the console in which the panning will be done. So let's hear this now. It might be a little easier to listen to. I mean, you guys get the idea already. It's a nice rock track a la Foo Fighters. Gotta remember doing all this now. Oh, this is such a perfect song for this. Okay. Pre-chorus. Floor tom. Oh, taking a look at the toms here, I already noticed the first thing. You must have edited that down. As you can tell, yeah, we probably strip silenced and then rendered it. Okay. And I also have this note summed. Okay, so let's take a look at my notes here, and I'll describe to you exactly what we got. I have my input list. So on kick in, we used an ATM 25 into a 1032 pre, which is a BAE pre, but it might as well be a Neve 1073. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's a Neve pre. It sounds exactly like a 1073 and even better than some of the vintage examples I've used, in my opinion. BAE stuff is awesome. 1032 is just a little bit different EQ points than the standard 1073. The 1032 is sort of 1081 inspired EQ points. That's a lot of numbers, I know. Okay, so what do we got? We got 1032, no compression, and then it went into the 1032 with a little bit of EQ. It went into a GML. It says big, tight, mid-cut, slight EQ, mass pass, wide, gentle. So it kind of went through a bunch of EQ, it looks like. So 3 different EQs. But just because I had 3 different EQs on there doesn't mean I was doing much with them. Maybe a dB here and there. Let's take a listen to that kick drum solo out. Pretty cool. Good amount of dynamics, but I'm cool with that. I like that in a rock track. Yeah, that's actually a really good sound to start with. Good shape. Okay, so that's that guy. What else we got here? Kick out. Kick out is a CM7 FET, and a CM7 FET is basically a U47 FET. Pretty safe to say they're almost interchangeable, depending on who you talk to. It's just an awesome mic. It's a FET. It's a FET 47. So CM7 FET on the kick out, no compression, GML, also GML EQ. Why? Because it's awesome. Big mid cut, slight EQ, 1032 EQ. So it had a little GML on it, and it had a little bit of 1032 EQ on it. So let's hear the kick out. Perfect. It's exactly what I want it to sound like. That's great. So far, so good here, guys. Let's take a look at our snare drum. Snare top. Snare top is a 57 going into another 1032. So this is our 3rd channel of Neve. The notes I wrote down are 3 fingers distance, place to reject kit, place to reject kick, 1032 EQ, massive passive EQ. So it's got a little 1032, a little bit of massive passive on it. I don't have specific EQ notes on that stuff, but we have a general idea. I know based on having done it a bunch that it was probably not too crazy. But then again, sometimes I like to crank away EQ on drums on the way in if I'm feeling adventurous. So let's take a step back here. I also have a note that our pitch on the snare changed by the end of the track, which is not good. Let's see. See what that means. It's a little lower. Oh, there we go. So that's either because we comped 2 takes together right there, or something wonky happened on the drum. And likely, I could have easily put this note down way after the fact. Likely that snuck its way into the performance and we didn't figure it out till it was too late. So whatever, it's not the end of the world. Is it ideal? No. Maybe we'll try to mitigate that with a sample. We'll see. Okay, so snare top, 57, snare bottom, 57, 1032 again. And that's all the notes I have for that. I don't know if there's EQ on it. I bet there is. Probably from the 1032. Okay. Toms. Tom 1, Tom 2. So it's a 2-tom kit, a rack tom and a floor tom. And we actually used 2 mics on Tom 1 and 2 mics on Tom 2. So we had a mic on the top of our first tom and a mic on the bottom of our first tom, mic on the top of our floor tom, mic on the bottom of our floor tom. Those mics were a 421 on the top and a 414 on the bottom, 421 on the top, 414 on the bottom. Let's see what notes I have about that. They went into the API, so straight into the console. We probably did everything else on API here. The only EQ on that, it says significant mid cut, so we probably cut some mids out of both toms. Probably the same EQ on both toms, because that's how I roll. And it's probably the same on both mics. It looks like it was summed and then EQ'd, so whatever EQ I did would have gone to the summed signal. Yeah, so the 414, the only other thing I've noticed is that the 414 on the bottom was in supercardioid or hypercardioid. I'm not sure what you call it on a 414, but supercardioid probably to get rid of bleed. So I don't know if you guys, some of you may have experimented with it, but I think adding a bottom tom mic is sometimes an awesome thing. Sometimes it's a pain in the ass, but quite often it adds a whole bunch of bottom end to and body to the toms that you then later don't need to EQ in, and it sounds really freaking cool to me and huge. So let's check this out. I'm gonna turn both toms on. Yeah. So we probably did this the day of. Obviously, we edited the bleed, and then we did a little bit of crossfading on the end of it. You can really feel the body on that floor tom from that 414 on the bottom. It's fantastic. I love that sound. Sometimes it can get in the way. Sometimes it can be too much, and again, depending on what the role of the drums are in the particular production you're doing, you may not need that. And sometimes, a lot of times, there's a such thing as too many microphones. And it's just a judgment call based on the arrangement as to whether or not you need something like that. If the drums are just going to be rocking it in your face and all over the place and a big part of your song, yeah, go for it. You can always, put it on another track if you don't want it and mute it later. Okay, let's take a look at the overheads here. They sound really good. I can tell by listening that there's EQ on them. So they are KM84s, my favorite pair of KM84s here, vintage Neumann KM84s, a matched pair, which makes them awesome for overheads. And as often as I try getting away from the KM84 as an overhead, I still end up coming back to it. I'm either using KM84s most of the time or a pair of ribbons, which, again, just depends on my mood, the day of the week, the drummer, and whatever the style of music is. So KM84s are never going to be bad on overhead. So it's KM84s. Oh, well, they went into a pair of vintage Neve 1073s. So they almost certainly had a little bit of top end added on the Neves. And they're a spaced pair as well. So that's about all we need to know there. They sound good. Yeah, I like the stereo image on those so far. You can definitely hear the ride. That's cool. Okay. Hats. The hat is a 451 into the API. Also, probably a little EQ. But not anything too crazy. Again, a very usable microphone. Cool. Sometimes hat microphones suck, and we don't want to use them. Front of kit. This is something I do quite often and don't always use, but it's pretty easy to set up, and I like getting it, and just in case I want to use it for something. And what this is a mid-side pair that was encoded or decoded, I guess decoded, would be the correct terminology. It was decoded to left-right stereo as we recorded it. So it's an MS pair, a pair of our 251s. Oh, beautiful microphones. They're not actual vintage 251s. They're Bach 251s, which are fantastic. Into the API, about 4 feet in front of the kit, according to the notes. So about 4 feet in front of the kit, probably at waist level. So let's hear that. That sounds awesome. I should also mention this. Something I forgot to mention already is that this is trimmed, the volumes we have this session at right now, it's trimmed for going to the analog console. So when it was recorded at a mixed level, so to speak. It was recorded at a level that I know, while I had the faders at Unity, would be a rational kind of mix. I wasn't worried about, bit depth or any of that stuff. This isn't tape. I didn't need to hit certain things really hard. I didn't need to worry about noise floor, really. I mean, for the most part. So this thing at Unity, this session, the way I recorded it, the way I engineered it, should play back at Unity. It should sound reasonably good. These faders shouldn't have to move around more than a few dB, or in the case of this exercise, once we're on the console, they shouldn't be anything too drastic. I mean, that could change, but, depending. But that's generally where we're at. So front of kit sounds good. I'm sure we'll use it. Rooms. They sound really good. The rooms are 4006, 4006 B&Ks probably, and they're Omni, which is pretty bitchin'. And they're going to be down on the floor, according to my notes. So we had them on the floor, 7 feet or so in front of the kit, probably spaced pair. I already have a thought on this based on the way that sounds. Something we may want to try to do, which will be pretty fun. So, okay, so that's the drums. I'm going to come back to this in a second. I'm going to come back to the drums. I think we're going to do some work on that stuff before we quit today. Okay, let's take a look at the bass. Pretty self-explanatory. Bass DI, bass amp, bass distortion DI. So this bass DI is probably a Countryman DI. I don't have notes on what bass guitar we used, unfortunately. It sounds kind of like a P bass to me, but I don't know. So bass DI, bass amp, self-explanatory, bass DI distortion. So likely we split the DI or multed the DI and added the distortion pedal here and a clean signal here, and then the bass amp, we know what that is, right? So let's hear that. That sounds good. That has EQ on it for sure. I don't know about compression. Typically, I don't have any notes on it. Typically I would put like a little bit of an 1176 on there, but not doing anything too crazy. So that's that. Let's hear our amp. You know what I like about that is it's adding some growl and some mid-range to the signal. So this will help it cut against the guitar a bit, and I'm sure the distortion will as well. Oh wow, it's super quiet. So obviously I pre-balanced these 3 signals. Let's hear them together. Must not have wanted too much of that distortion in there. All right, well, we'll make mental note of that for tomorrow. The The balance of these will depend on what the balance of these is like, because what will end up happening is I'll end up using, this could change, but I'll end up using the bass DI for the bottom, and I'll sort of use this to support the guitars. So whatever I feel the guitars are missing, I will use this to support, most likely. Things have a way of changing once you actually get to, your plans have a way of changing once you actually get to the mix though, right? So here we go. Let's check out guitar 1. Ooh, I have notes. I have notes on the guitars. Cool. So this is, I think, all recorded on at the same time on the same day, but these guitars, oh wow. Okay, so these are all summed as well. Cool. For better or worse. I don't think I would sum these nowadays, but I did here. So what we got is a Dr. Z 18-watt amp into a Marshall 4x12 cabinet. It's going to be the with the V30s in it, I think, and a 57 and a 121 on that cabinet. And then I also have written down secret box. I have this little amp cabinet simulator. A lot of times I won't use that, so I might have muted that. I didn't. I bet you I muted it based on what I'm hearing. See, that probably didn't make it into the summed signal. And then there's a second amp, actually. It's a Boss Katana. I couldn't even tell you what that is. Like, that is something that I used on that day that I probably will never see again. And it had a 57 and a 414 on it. So a total of 2 amps into a 2x12 cabinet. So a total of 2 amps and 4 microphones summed down to a single channel. Probably no EQ. Phase checked. It says phase checked, all summed to 1 track. So let's hear that again. That one's definitely darker, especially in that palm muting section. That might be a different guitar. Yeah, same amp setup, different guitars. One's a lot brighter than the other, so it's interesting. I know that when we recorded this, we left it a bit sloppy. I think we liked at that moment to having something that was played down from top to bottom. We didn't want to get too crazy with our performance. We wanted it to feel real and live. And this track definitely feels very real. It's not, I don't think there might not be even any punch-ins on the guitar. It might just be one from top to bottom. I'm not sure. But I know that was what we were trying to go for. So 2 rhythm guitars. And then let's see what this is. So that's like a chorus lift guitar. Usually when I'm recording these, I'm looking to get a bunch of mid-range out of it, and it definitely lift and thicken the guitar in that section. So definitely achieves that. Let's see what these are. It's our outro guitars. So I don't know if we're going to need those, but they are there. So we shall see. They could get muted in the end. And then down to vocals.
Taking our frustrations on the world tonight.
Sadly, I do not have any notes on how we recorded the vocal. It's probably an SM7B into a Neve module into an 1176 because I use that chain a lot. It's typically that chain or one of the Bach 251s into the API into an 1176 or a distressor. So I know it's not super helpful. There's maybe a tiny bit of bottom pulled out or not.
Taking our frustrations on the world tonight. There's only so much one can take before they finally break. 9 to 5, a week goes by, I'm not better off at all.
So these are going to be doubles.
Repeat the cycle every year until you're in the ground. Is this what a life is supposed to be? Waves of frustration and misery.
We're in good shape with the vocal, man. Good performance. Pretty well locked down with compression. We'll see if we need to add a ton of compression or not to that. Hard to say. So, okay. Now we know what we've got here in terms of elements. I'm not going to do anything to the vocal. We'll leave them alone. Guitars are going to stay as they are. Bass is going to stay as it is. The only thing I am concerned about is the drums, because now is the time if I want to augment anything to do it. And based on my normal process and sort of what I heard here just now, there's a few different things I'm thinking about doing. I might just go ahead and do them, and then tomorrow when we're mixing, decide if I need them. It's just kind of my usual process. I'll mute or unmute, depending. So I'm not a big proponent of sample using. I'm one of those guys that tries to not use samples whenever I can. I don't have anything against them. I think, however you want to get from point A to B, great. More power to you. I just personally have a hard time getting them to sound right. I have a hard time making them do what I want them to do. And, I've been playing drums my entire life, and samples, to my ear, sometimes and more often than not sort of remove some of the musicality from whatever's happening. Now, again, I can't stress this enough. I'm not saying I don't like samples. Probably most of the songs I enjoy right now are samples that have live drums in them. If it's a pop track, I use samples, okay? Great. Till the cows come home. For a rock track or a live band playing or something like that, or a band in general with non-synthetic instrumentation, man, if I can get away with not using samples, I really like doing that. I think it's cool. So, having said that, I think I'm going to add some samples. It looks like we recorded... Oh, there's no kick out back there. I'll have to look for another file. Maybe I have one somewhere. It looks like we recorded sample 1 hits at the end of the session. Let's check it out. Yeah, we did. So there's kick drum hits. Let's check the snare hits. Yeah.
This time.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a sample from the session of our kick drum and of our snare drum and add it back in underneath the snare and the kick. There's a couple reasons I want to do that. Sometimes samples will actually reduce dynamic range because you're adding more signal in, and that could be really cool when you're trying to deal with bleed and you don't want to add compression. So I think we'll put a sample. It's going to be this exact same kick sound, but a sample from back here in underneath it and see if we like it. We might not, whatever. We're not going to know until we try. So there's no point in not trying and just thinking about it and talking about it. We don't need to waste our time doing that. So kick sample's going in after I make one. It'll just be a direct sample. I'm not going to add any room or anything when I blend it. Same with snare. The second reason, there's obviously a lot of snare bleed here. Not snare bleed, but kit bleed in the snare. That's how it works. That's the way it goes. So by adding a sample in, we'll sort of be able to reduce that a bit by bringing up we'll be reducing the noise floor a bit of that some of that leakage. It's almost like gating, kind of, sort of, but not at all. It's totally like gating, but not at all. So we'll do that, and then that may also help alleviate that snare drum pitch thing at the end. But that ain't going anywhere. That's just going to be the way it is. It's cool. I don't care. No one's going to notice except for you and me. and it's not going to make the song worse or better. It just is what it is. And shoot, it's music. What are we going to do? Not a big deal. So snare, kick. I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to use slate trigger. I'm not going to record. I'll record it and probably pause recording and come right back once it's done. It'll be like magic. All right. We're back, and now we magically have our samples in place. So here's what the kick sample sounds like. Here's what the original kick drum sounds like. Here's what they sound like together. I got a feeling we're going to use that. I really like the way that's blending together, and it sort of does reduce the dynamic range in a good way. And obviously, I printed it. When I was using slate trigger to put that in just now, I adjusted the volume of it before I committed it to be around the zone I wanted here. Sounds pretty good. Snare sample. Let's check that out. It's kind of not as cool. Regular snare, snare bottom, snare sample. Not sure about that. I printed it a little quieter. I kind of listened to it with the other close mics on. I printed it a bit quieter. I'm not sure if we need it or if it'll help mitigate the pitch stuff at the end. I might just be fine with that. So it's there if we need it. We can mute it if we don't think it's helping things tomorrow, but it's there. So toms are good. They're already edited. All the bleed is taken out. I'm into that idea. Something I usually do 9 out of 10 times. Sometimes the bleed adds something musical that is cool, and when you take it out, it is detrimental to your drum sound. So it's not a foregone conclusion that that's going to happen. But, more often than not, I want as few microphones playing back in the drum kit as I need. I don't want microphones going that I don't need. The more mics that are in there, the less focused the drums sound. So typically. So those are cool. No samples needed. He's playing very aggressively on the floor, Tom, trying to get samples to do what he's doing in here. To sound right. It's hard to do. It's just gonna screw with the rock and rollness of the song, and that's what we're going for, rock and rollness. So screw it, it's fine. Let's hear, wonder why that's got an edit. Healed. Let's hear the overheads. Oh, we already heard them, but let's hear them again. They're great. They don't need anything. I could see panning them in a little bit to get out of the way of the guitars. That's something that I run into an issue with sometimes on a rock track with thick guitars, is the cymbals really, and the overheads and the guitars can not work well together. And personally, I don't mind panning the cymbals in a little bit. Wide drums are overrated, so I didn't always feel that way. That's just the mode I've been in lately. Hi-hats, man. Sure as heck aren't sample replacing those. Let's see. Front of kick. Nothing to do with that. It sounds great. I want to check something here real quick. Not in phase and not out of phase. That is both good and bad. Typically, I like something to be either out of phase, obviously out of phase, or obviously in phase. That's kind of the best scenario. So we're sort of in the halfway point in between, which is not a big deal, especially depending on the level at which these are presented at. So, what else? Oh, rooms. Let me listen to this for 30 seconds. I am a huge fan of room mics in drum recording. I love room mics. Whenever I can get away with squeaking the room mics in as loud as possible, I'm a happy guy. Sometimes it doesn't work, but when I can turn them up, I'm happy. Now, having said that, I'm concerned that I will not be able to get these room mics as loud as I want them in the mix because of how hard he's hitting those cymbals and how much cymbal there is in those. That said, I have a trick. Do I want to do it? That's the question. I'm gonna do the trick and then show you guys what the trick is, and then we can decide later tomorrow if we want them or not. Hang on, it requires more sample replacement. Oh, one more thing I want to say about sample replacement before I forget. I should have mentioned this earlier. So the goal here is to do as little in Pro Tools as possible before tomorrow's mix for this exercise, right? We're trying to do a really pure analog mix on this song. And you might be asking yourself, well, dude, you're doing sample replacement, man. I mean, like, you're using slate trigger to mess with your drums. To that, I say, so what? And the reason is people have been doing sample replacement on drums for 35 years, since the early 80s. So it's sample replacement or sample augmentation on drums is not something that is new. It's been around forever. People have been doing it to tape forever. You've been triggering samplers with audio tracks for ages. So I'm no expert, but I feel like it's something we were seeing a lot even in the early 80s. So it ain't a new thing, and it's certainly not something that that wasn't commonplace, 30 plus years ago. So I'm totally cool with doing it, and a lot of our favorite songs have it. Okay, just wanted to get that out of the way. So stand by. I'm going to do some work on these, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. That was fun. Room mics. Bust the room mics as well as these samples down to this one aux track. So now anything room related is coming out this aux, and I'll probably leave it this way and then just send this to the console tomorrow in a pair. So room left and room right are exactly the same. What I did is I made samples from this part of the session of the kick drum room, snare drum room, tom room, and I have added them in underneath to boost the sound of the drum kit and reduce the sound of the cymbals. So let's hear what that sounds like. It's going to sound kind of fake right now, but in context, applied appropriately, it should sound pretty good. Pretty cool, huh? Wait for a tom fill. Here, let's go up to the toms. So as you can see, we end up with more drums and less cymbals. It's pretty dope. Doesn't always work. When it does work, it's great. And I think that'll enable me to turn the room track up just a little more. Again, I'm not sure if it's going to be panned hard left and right, or if we'll narrow that image a bit in the mix to get out of the way of the guitar. We'll find out. I think that's about it. Let's check out the drum kit one last time. Have not made a group, so I got to solo all of these up separately. Dude, that sounds fantastic. We are going to be in great shape tomorrow. Hopefully I won't have to do too much to this because it's already sort of on its way. There is one final thing I'm going to do, guys. There's one final thing I'm going to do. I am going to make a crunchy gated kick snare track. Kick snare tom track, I think. This is something I do a lot also. It's pretty easy to do in Pro Tools. If you want to learn how to do it, find me on social media or, shoot me an email or something. I'll happily teach you exactly how to do it. I am not going to force you to sit through the process right now, so I am just going to go ahead and do it and then come back with it finished and explain to you quickly what I did. Okay. All right. I'm back. Okay, so what I did was I took the snare drums, the kick drums, and the tom-toms and bust them to a single mono track here, gated the output of all of those, actually, sent it to the Neve 1073 and crushed it. So the gated signal went to the 1073, so it was gated before it hit the 1073. Once it got there, it got smashed into oblivion, and here's what that sounds like. Where is that? Now, you may be asking yourself, why did you do that? Well, because it sounds cool. It sounds cool in the track. It's, you could think of it like compressing. You could think of it like distortion, just adding distortion. You could think of it as clipping, adding clipping in. But here's what it sounds like. It adds some thickness to the drums, and a lot of times in digital, it's nice to add a little bit of distortion. And by in digital, I guess I should say in lieu of having tape to saturate things, it can be nice to add a little bit of distortion in. So I find myself doing this a lot more often. Certainly these days, certainly if I'm just working completely in the box, which is, let's be honest, that's what I do most of the time. It can be really beneficial in making the drums not sound too clean. Yeah, it can be really cool. So here it is, the distortion track, mono track. I'll bring it up on its own fader tomorrow. Rooms will bring up on a pair, and the kicks will come up on one fader tomorrow. The snares will come up on one fader tomorrow. Obviously, pair here, one fader, pair, and then a pair for all these guys. So yeah, we may not use this. We may not use this. And we may not use our samples. But we have them. And it didn't take all but, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to add all that stuff in total. And, we're pretty much ready to go here. So I don't think I have too much else to add to this part of the process. we've got our markers. That's cool. We've got our color coding, which is cool. I have these filters currently on the vocal to get rid of some of the plosives. I don't know if I want to leave those on. I'm morally conflicted, being that I'm trying not to use any plugins on this whole process. So we'll see. Yeah, I think that's about it. I'm going to leave these ride notes in that we have because I think, was it the only two? That'll come in handy tomorrow. Won't forget that. So that's it. That's it. If you guys have questions, if you guys want to know more about something, if you guys have a comment, something you want to share with me, find me on social media, email me. I'll be happy to elaborate on anything I've done here in this prep session. And I guess I should also note that if I was prepping for a Pro Tools mix, this would actually be quite a bit different. It's a much more involved process for me because I might import some different template stuff I have, and I'm just approaching it quite a bit differently. So that's it. We'll see you in the next chapter.